Protected by the Romeo and Juliet laws.
We dated for a little while. I was a sophomore and he was a senior. It's fine.
No, it's not fine.
We've got a pre-existing juvenile foundational relationship. Statute 2705-3.
What? Texas statute? Is that a real law? Yep. Romeo and Juliet, huh? You know how those two ended up?
No.
Dead. Do your parents know about this? Is your dad okay with you dating a 17-year-old girl?
He took off when I was 5, but if I ever go big for my life,
You know, Tessa, I trusted you.
and just so you know, my life savings was in that car back there. This is that happening. Oh, it definitely is.
Transformers 4, or Transformers Age of Extinction, turned 10 years old today on June 27th, and this movie's trash. I used to be these movies' strongest soldiers, okay? I was in the front lines defending them with my life. I know I said in my Transformers 2 10-year video that I didn't like that movie, but I lied, okay? I was just way too embarrassed to admit that I actually do like that one.
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
But alas, I have to throw in the towel for this one because this movie's so bad. Now, despite everything I just said, my hatred for this movie has honestly waned a bit over the years. Don't get me wrong, this movie still sucks, but I genuinely used to think that this was one of the worst pieces of media ever created a few years ago. But I think over these last few years, I've noticed that these other big budget blockbusters just don't have any type of sauce to them anymore, and they just green screen everything to get their point across. Even though this is easily one of my least favorites in the franchise, it still does have a bit of Michael Bay's sauce and spectacle that makes it stand out compared to other blockbusters, and they still did film a lot of it on location and sets. But before we dive any further into this movie, you already know what we have to talk about first. So despite Age of Extinction being one of the worst movies of the Michael Bay movies, I'd also say it has the worst toy line out of all the movies as well. Like, they had a lot of stinkers in this one. And of course, me, being typical me, I pretty much have almost all of them. I think the only ones I don't have is Evasion Mode Optimus Prime, and I do not have either of the two leader classes, which was, I think, leader class Optimus Prime and Grimlock. I did want the Evasion Mode Optimus back in the day, but obviously money doesn't grow off trees, and I did not want the two leader classes because they just added like random chrome to them and they looked really bad. First up, we have Crosshairs, and he actually turned out a lot better than I'd say the other ones did in this line, and I think he overall just looks pretty accurate to how he does in the movie. His Studio Series one over here is pretty good, although I will say I think I have to give it to this one. He's just way more fun to handle than the Studio Series one that we got a little bit later because he's really hollow in a lot of areas. One thing that I didn't like that they started doing with this line was simplifying the transformations by like a ton. This is the only one I'll do as an example, but like, look how easy it is to convert him from the robot to his car. And keep in mind, I've had this for like going on 10 years now, and I can still easily remember how to transform this thing, like, no problem. But that was like one of the joys of those older Transformers, was having those somewhat like intricate transformations to get it from robot to car. But like when it is as simple as just him kind of hunching his back over, he's essentially just a shell former, that is. But like, it's kind of rough, but like, it really took no effort for me to transform this thing from robot. Like you can see he's literally just kind of standing here. They simplified the transformations by a lot in this line. One thing that also bothered me about this car mode, it doesn't look bad overall, but like I hated how they only painted one side and then the other side is not painted because they ran out of paint budget, I'm assuming, but that's always kind of bothered me because it's not like that in the movie. Next up, we have Drift, which he's like, I really do not like the head sculpt they got going on for him here. It really looks really bad, and I don't like how pretty much he's overall just a dark blue, because in the movie these dark blue areas were just black. He was mostly black with this light blue. It's not horrible, but it could have been a lot better for sure. He is a licensed Bugatti though, however, so that's pretty cool. Still wish, you know, the dark blue was black though. I think that just make this look a lot better. Next up, we have the high octane Bumblebee, which honestly, I think this one is pretty cool. This was easily one of my favorite designs Bumblebee had in any of the movies, so I think this was overall just a W. And then I absolutely love the Camaro that he was in this movie, and they did a great job capturing it in the toy as well. So I really do wish we get like an updated, like proper studio series version of him, because this is definitely, like, I'd say top 3 within the Age of Extinction toy line for sure. Now I will admit, as much as I don't like this design for Bumblebee in the movie, like I still think they captured the toy pretty well of the design, and like he has a cool little hidden blaster right here, which is kind of cool. Overall though, I mean, the designers, I applaud them honestly, just trying to make this design turn into an actual Transformer, because like, even though again I do not like the design of the Bumblebee, like I think they did a pretty good job capturing it, so props to them for that for sure. Next up, we have Hound, and like this guy is weaponized out like crazy. I think he honestly might be my favorite figure in the Age of Extinction line. I love the amount of like weapons he comes with too. And I also find it hilarious how like the designers didn't even try to make him fat with this figure. Like they just slimmed him out, and I honestly think that was the best for it. My only, I guess, gripe for him is that I think his head is kind of small for, you know, his whole body, but like overall I think they really knocked it out of the park with Hound. Like this honestly looks better than how he does in the movie, if I'm being real with you. Next up, we have easily the worst figure in the entire line, which is the Age of Extinction Lockdown. Words cannot describe how terrible he is. Like the shade of black is completely off. He is super small. He's a retool of the, I think, Dark of the Moon Roadbuster with the way he transforms. He looks so bad. He's super small too for Lockdown. If you look in the film, he is as tall as Optimus Prime. So I have no clue how this got greenlit. Just for reference, here is the Studio Series Lockdown that we got like a few years later, and this figure is not perfect, keep in mind, but this is leaps and bounds better than this original 2014 one right here. Like, it is embarrassing how this got released, honestly. And I'd say the only thing this one has going for it over, I guess, this one is that he actually does come with the gun face thing, but that's in a drawer somewhere. I do not feel like getting it out. This is easily the worst figure, and it's like he's like almost the main Decepticon slash bad guy in the movie. So how they managed to mess him up this bad is outstanding. Next up, we have the Voyager class Galvatron from Age of Extinction, and honestly, I don't think this figure is too bad. Once again, props to the design team for having to make this thing turn into a truck. Now granted, all of it is on his back, but you know what? I can let it slide because it isn't super visible from the front. But I'd say the only thing this one's really lacking is color. I think it needs a bit more paint to it. He's honestly pretty neck and neck with the Studio Series one. This one definitely improves the color and like overall this like the nice metallic silver on it. But I'd also say like this one does stuff better than this one, and then this one does stuff better than that one. Like the gun on this one's way better than this little puny one that was in the Studio Series one. This one also just has a much cleaner backpack as well. But like overall, I like both of these Galvatrons, I'll be perfectly honest. I think they did a pretty good job capturing what we saw in the movie. Okay, so technically this next figure wasn't in the Age of Extinction line, but that's also just because this character never got a figure during that line for some reason. And that is Stinger. So here's Studio Series Stinger that was released a few years after the movie. And yeah, this figure just isn't great. Proportion wise, he just looks very odd. Like he just doesn't really look how he should. Honestly, like, yeah, he just isn't great. And it was super weird how he didn't come out during the Age of Extinction line, because he is a licensed Pagani, so they could get the rights to Pagani for him to have a toy, but I guess it just didn't come out during the movie, I guess. Moving on to the Dinobots now, we're going to be starting with Grimlock, and overall, I think this is a pretty solid Grimlock toy, and I do like how these like mainline Age of Extinction ones put like some color on them, because as you know in the film, they just all made them gray, essentially. But I do like this like, you know, kind of bronze, just orange that they got going on here for Grimlock, and yeah, overall, I think it turned out pretty good. However, a few years later, though, he did get absolutely blown out of the water with the Studio Series Grimlock, which is so big I can't even really fit him fully in this frame, but like this thing is like crazy good. Like absolutely love how this thing turned out, and you know, he's color accurate. This is how he looked in the movie, and like as much as I appreciate this one, like this is honestly what we should have got with to begin with, honestly, especially comparing it to that 1 liter class Age of Extinction figure during the time. Like, this is a night and day difference essentially. Next up we have Scorn, who is another one that appeared in the film, and this is a pretty cool one. I'd say honestly he's probably my favorite like secondary figure that we got from the movie. I really like how red he is and how he has like this tail as kind of like his other arm, which I think is pretty sick. The only downside is I'd say he's kind of small, especially for a, you know, dinobot, and they usually tower over all the other Autobots, so that's a little disappointing, but overall I still think he looks really cool. But then in God knows for what reason, during the last Nightline, they decided to redo him and absolutely knock it out of the park. I mean, like, look at this. Like, this is an upgrade if I say so myself. Like, his whole like thing is like articulated now with his tail. Like, this is sick. Like, he doesn't even appear in The Last Night, but for some reason they just decided to redo him for that line, and like, he just looks incredible. Like, they were popping off making this redesign for him. Next up we have Slug, and they decided to make purple be his main color, and he's a pretty cool one. He's not my favorite or anything. He's just kind of a middle of the road dinobot for me. Like, he looks cool, but I don't think he's anything like incredible, so he's just a nice cool addition to the team. Next up we have Strafe, which I'm still surprised they didn't just call him Swoop from G1, but regardless, he's a pretty cool one. I like just the blue on him, and you know, blue's one of my favorite colors, so you know, that's always gonna have some bonus points there for me. There's a really nice wingspan, especially in his Dinobot mode. Like, that's pretty cool. Yeah, Strafe is definitely one of my favorites of the Dinobots for sure. Okay, next we're gonna be moving on to the Dinobots that didn't appear in the movie, and first up we have Slash, and Slash is really bizarre to me. His colors are super duper just like out there and crazy, which to its benefit and to its downfall, I feel it really is just like, it's kind of hard to make out what I'm looking at here. Articulation wise, he is absolutely horrid though. Like, so much stuff you have to move out of the way just to get him to, like, you know, move his arm, and these like little kneecap things are like super duper annoying to like just make him do anything. And this figure, he's just really weird, especially since he's also Velociraptor, which is like a really small dinosaur, and yet he's somehow like one of the biggest ones when you transform him. So super just weird release all around, honestly. Next up we have Snarl and Slog, and I decided to group these two together because if you guys go back to my channel back in like 2016, I actually reviewed these guys when I first got them, as these were the last 2 Age of Extinction figures I got. So that's kind of a cool little thing to know about. And overall, I think these guys look pretty cool. I mean, I'm surprised Snarl didn't make it into the movie, considering he's like one of the main, like, you know, Dinobots, but he looks pretty cool. I like the like lime green on him, and Slog was pretty cool too. I like the mix of the, you know, red and the gray here. And the only thing I'm not a huge fan of is that he's like has a lot of rubber plastic on him, and it makes some areas of him look really like flimsy and cheap. But overall, yeah, these two are still pretty good despite not, you know, showing up in the movie. And here we have every single Age of Extinction figure that I do own, minus Studio Series, with the exception being Stinger, simply because he didn't have a figure during this line. And I'll admit, overall, looking back, not as bad as I originally thought. However, it is still a huge downgrade in my opinion compared to what we got with the previous 3 movies. So overall, just a very lackluster line of figures. Now, each movie has received a tie-in game for its release, and they've all been decent at the very least, so I wonder what game tied into Age of Extinction. Oh. So, off rip, this game was not made by High Moon Studios, who made the Dark of the Moon game and Peak Fiction. They went off to make the Deadpool game, so Activision got Edge of Reality to make it instead. So, what has Edge of Reality made before this? Uh-oh. Yeah, this game is terrible. Already, the entire idea and concept of this game is super strange because it's supposed to be a pre-sequel to Fall of Cybertron, while also trying to tie into Age of Extinction as well. And the two styles clash so bad because the Cybertron stuff doesn't look too bad, mainly because it's reused assets from the High Moon games, while the Bayverse stuff looks so awful it's not even funny. I can't even begin to explain to you what a Dark Spark even is, and how it even crosses over between the two universes. Like, this game's whole existence just puzzles me, because what was the point of making this game besides making some extra money? It plays like the High Moon games, but it just lacks all the polish those games had. It reuses so many animations and assets from the Cybertron games, and yet it still somehow manages to look like a huge downgrade compared to those other ones. And what's worse is that I have the Wii U version, so it looked and ran even worse for me. I recall it crashing my Wii U multiple times and how bad it was. All the bad guys reuse the same like 3 voice lines, and if I hear "let's see what they got" one more time, I'm going to blow my brains out. The Bayverse missions only have you play as Optimus, Bumblebee, Drift, and a really awful looking version of Grimlock. Hound and Crosshairs are nowhere to be seen or heard of at all. The game just pretends that they don't even exist. Overall, just don't play this game. Please, just don't. They delisted it when they delisted the other games, so it's pretty hard to track down for a not outrageous price, but even still, just don't play it. It is not worth it, I promise you. Please, just play the other ones. They are like 10 billion times better, I swear. So by 2013, I was fully watching YouTube as my main source of entertainment. I was watching Sonic videos and Lego game playthroughs and definitely a lot of stuff I wasn't supposed to be watching back then.
What the hell, you f***ing assholes?
Whoa! But in summer of 2013, I discovered a channel that would then become my main source of Transformers news updates. The Raging Nation, who would upload news updates on the filming process and show the behind the scenes photos of the sets and details of what the movie was gonna be about. This is how I found out about the dinobots, the new characters, the new designs, and overall what the main premise of what the movie was gonna be about way before when it actually did come out. Now I still watch the Raging Nation from time to time, but he doesn't upload as much nowadays because 1, he has a life, and 2, there isn't as much stuff to cover anymore in the franchise as, you know, it's kind of struggling to hang in there. When I saw that Super Bowl trailer for this movie though, my excitement was through the roof. I didn't care how different the designs looked or anything. Once I saw Optimus Prime riding Grimlock, I was locked in. February to June felt like an eternity as I could not wait for this movie. This was easily my most anticipated thing of 2014 next to Smash 4. And on June 27th, 2014, I finally went to go see the movie. But I didn't go alone. It was me, my dad, and I invited my best friend who you're all probably familiar with, Kyron, aka Computer Boy, aka Thiesway. Okay Kyron, so 10 years ago we went and saw Transformers 4, or Transformers Age of Extinction together, and yeah, how would you describe that experience?
Yeah, it sucked.
All 3 of us went to go see the movie at the latest showing that night, which we didn't realize yet would be an absolutely horrible mistake. And you guys won't believe me when I say this, but I liked it. Hold on, let me explain. So deep down, I knew this movie was trash and it severely let me down, but I had kept up with the hype for this movie for over a year at this point, and I hadn't disliked any of the previous films before this, so it just felt wrong for me to say that I hated it after all this time. The best way to describe how I felt about this movie is how Chris Stuckman felt about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in his review for that movie.
And I remember seeing the film for the first time and leaving the theater, and I was definitely in denial. I remember just being like, it's like a B. Yeah, it's like a B. And even though I was in denial about it, I knew right off the bat instantly that it was the worst of the 4. But I couldn't bring myself to say that I didn't like it. I was just so crushed by the possibility of this movie that I had been hearing about for so many years. But then I saw the film one more time in theaters and again on DVD, and I thought to myself, it's not like a B.
It took me a month of deep thought and just watching other people's reviews of Age of Extinction for my true colors for the film to finally come out. I officially hated this movie, and it did break my little heart to admit that. But why was that exactly? Now I think everyone can agree that this and the next movie just shouldn't have existed at all. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and say that Dark of the Moon ended the trilogy perfectly, but it ended in a way that tied up everything in a nice little bow. All the Decepticons were defeated, Sam and Carly got married, I think. Cybertron was destroyed. Well, at least I thought it was. And overall, the Earth was saved and the war was over. But the problem is that Dark of the Moon grossed over $1.1 billion at the box office. So yeah, needless to say, Paramount and Hasbro looked at that number and knew they couldn't just stop there. We were getting more movies no matter what. And the only reason why Michael Bay came back to direct this one was because he saw all the kids lined up and excited to go on that new Transformers ride at Universal Studios at the time, and He decided he wasn't quite ready to let go of the franchise just yet. I'm surprised this was what made him want to come back, cause this man said he wasn't even gonna do Transformers 2 after the first one came out, but anyways. Now this does lead me to one of the few positives I have for this movie, which is the concept of it. Well, at least half of it. The idea that all Transformers are outlawed and being hunted after the events of Dark of the Moon I think is brilliant and a good natural continuation of the series. It's new for the franchise and puts these familiar characters in a situation they haven't fully been in before. However, it's the rest of this movie's concepts that just ruin what could have been a really interesting Transformers movie. The idea of the humans making their own Transformers after killing the ones already there is really stupid. Like, I get melting them down to make like new weapons and gizmos, but just recreating the same thing except you get to control them now is so dumb. Especially using the same brains of Megatron and Sentinel while recreating them, like that shouldn't have been an idea to them in the first place. As soon as you tried making one of them and they started looking like Megatron when you didn't want it to, that should have been the end of this whole operation.
I modeled Galvatron after Optimus Prime. Why does he keep looking like Megatron?
Simple coding.
Algorithms! Math! Why can't we make what we want to make the way we want to make it?
And don't even get me started on Transformium. That might be the stupidest name I've heard anything be called in film. You can tell the writers for this movie were like, hey, what should the stuff that Transformers are made of be called? And they all looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders being like, I don't know, Transformium I guess, and they just ran with it. The physics and logistics of Transformium just doesn't make any sense at all. It somehow looks less realistic and less believable than the real Transformers. Every time one of these man-made Transformers transforms, it looks like an old Windows Vista screensaver. The VFX for it just doesn't look very good and just isn't impressive whenever they transform. Transformium also leads into the most egregious product placement ever put into film. I'm not usually ever bothered by product placement in movies, but this one just takes it to a whole nother level where it's just really annoying. This one easily had it the worst out of all the movies. Briefly speaking of the VFX in this movie, I'm not gonna sit here and say it looks bad. It's still steps above what we usually get nowadays, but when you start to compare this one to the previous movies you got, you start to notice a downgrade. Now, there are still some shots that look just as good as the previous films, but overall, when you compare them side by side, there's just way less polish and attention to detail that those previous movies had. But I think that the new designs might be a cause of this as well, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. When it comes to the action scenes in this movie, I'm not gonna say they're outright bad, but there really isn't anything here that's on the level of like the Shanghai and Forest battle in Transformers 2, or the highway battle in Optimus's like kill streak in Transformers 3. There's kind of a scene like that in the end with Optimus and Grimlock, but it just doesn't hit the same as those previous movies, to be honest. Again, it isn't bad, like there are some good fight choreography during some of the one-on-one fights, but there isn't anything that's just super memorable or impressive. There is one action scene in this movie that's always bothered me, and that's when they let Galvatron loose to fight against the Autobots. Also, real quick, Tessa totally should have died here. Like, there's no way anyone's surviving that, but anyways, for God knows what reason, when Optimus is fighting for his life trying to survive against Galvatron and eventually Lockdown, the other Autobots are nowhere to be seen. You see them on the highway driving in the beginning, but then they legit disappear until way after Optimus is captured. Now, I'd understand if they had the humans and they were trying to get them to safety, but nope. The humans were with Optimus and Bumblebee the whole time, so they for real just left Optimus to die. Heck, even Bumblebee just disappears too. After he saw Galvatron turn into a Windows screensaver, he just disappears from the fight too. He must have been so shocked to see that he couldn't move for the next like 20 minutes.
Okay, warn the Autobots.
Well, Optimus, you shouldn't even have to be saying that because they could have been with you this whole time. I don't know if I could take much more of this movie, man. I really don't. Another scene that I've always hated is toward the end when Lockdown has like this giant magnet trying to find Optimus. Also, real subtle way of trying to get him back like that. Like, good luck trying to find him through all that. This thing legit is pulling up anything that's metal. Like, it's crazy. And of course, because of plot armor, our human cast are in a metal car driving around the city with a metal seed that just so happens to not get affected by this giant magnet until the very end when they reach their destination. Now, that's what you call some good writing at its finest, but let's get back on track. Including some lore of how the Transformers were made could have been okay, and at times it sort of is, but the movie already has too much going on in it, and the designs for some of these creatures are just hideous, but not in a good way, just very unappealing. They should have just saved most of this lore stuff for the next film, because this movie is already way too bloated as it is. Let's take into account how much stuff is going on here. This movie has to introduce us to new humans and Transformers, explain why the Transformers are being hunted, the humans trying to make their own Transformers, Transformers lore, the seed and how it relates to the original Transformers being made, who the Transformers creators are, the man-made Transformers turning bad and wanting the seed, and to put the icing on the cake, let's throw the dinobots in there as well. I kid you not, by the third act of this movie, you genuinely have no idea what's going on because there's just so much stuff happening. All you can kind of make out is that Galvatron wants the seed and Lockdown wants Optimus Prime back. And all this leads to this movie feeling like an eternity. Now, this was a complaint that I had even back when I technically liked this movie, in that this is way too long of a film. I remember very clearly when I was watching this movie for the first time, and it was during the part when they were blowing up Chicago for a second time, thinking it was the third act of the film. But then I remember we hadn't even gone to China or seen the Dinobots yet, and it was in that moment when 11-year-old me said to myself, yeah, this movie's way too long. Now, those other Transformers movies are pretty long too, don't get me wrong, but I feel like those other ones ended right when you're completely ready for them to end. But this one, man, this one is unacceptably too long. This movie easily feels like it's over 3 hours long. But when I learned that this movie was only 2 hours and 45 minutes, I was in complete disbelief. I can confidently say that Transformers Age of Extinction is the longest non-3-hour movie ever made. I'd even argue that this is probably the worst paced movie ever made as well. I swear there are actual 3+ hour long movies that feel shorter than this one. How is that possible? And it's so frustrating too, because there are so many scenes that could have easily been cut from this movie to make it shorter without it affecting the story at all. I'm gonna play this scene, and gun to your head, I want you to tell me 3 legit reasons as to why this needed to be in the final cut of the film.
What was that sound?
That's the sound.
That you asked for.
No, I asked for boundless, transcendent. When you walk through a door in this building, it should sound like you've stepped into the future.
Present. Say it.
Future.
You're dead, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Now, all this wouldn't have been so bad if any of the human characters were interesting to watch, which, speaking of the human characters, now, off rip, I'll start with the ones I enjoyed, which is Kelsey Grammer as, like, Robo Hitler. It's pretty hard for me to not like anything Kelsey Grammer's in, and I feel like he does a pretty good job being the main human bad guy in this. He was very imposing in this film, and his unique voice definitely helped portray that as well. I kind of liked his warrant face henchman guy as well. He was very over the top, which was fun, even though his death looked like it was straight out of RoboCop. And Stanley Tucci's always a joy to see, and he kind of acts like the replacement John Turturro in this movie. I even kind of like the chat he has with Optimus over them not needing the Transformers anymore. However, he did still have a lot of scenes that could have easily been cut from the movie though. But as far as everyone else though, oh boy. Now, I'm a Sandwich Wiki defender, okay? I thought he was a good, entertaining lead for the last 3 movies. He was witty, funny, had a heart, and overall just a good character you could connect with, and Shia added a lot to that character. He started losing his mind toward the end there, but nonetheless, he was still entertaining, you have to give him that. But with all that being said, I was perfectly fine with Sam not being in the movies anymore. I felt like his character arc was completed with him saving the world and marrying Carly, so there was just no real reason for him to come back. So, who was he replaced with?
I'm an inventor. This could be a game changer for me. If I can apply that technology to my inventions, we never have to worry about money again.
Insert Cade Yeager. Cade Yeager is an inventor who wants to make a difference in the world, but he lost his wife and is struggling financially to take care of his family. Now, on paper, that character doesn't sound too bad, and it makes sense with him getting involved within the Transformers world. But the problem is that he's played by Mark Wahlberg.
What? No.
Now, Marky Mark has always been pretty hit or miss for me in movies, and I unfortunately think he has more misses than hits, and in these movies, he's a pretty big miss. You can clearly tell he's just not trying very hard, and it feels like he's doing the bare minimum. He doesn't have any of the wit or charm Shia had, and he's just so bland and boring to watch. At times, he has those typical over-the-top Michael Bay character moments, but it's not very often at all. He has like one legitimately good touching scene with Optimus toward the end, but that must have been one of his first days on set for Mark when he actually cared to do the movie at first, because the rest of his performance is nowhere near as good as this one. Okay, so our main lead for this movie kind of sucks. We are not off to a good start. Tessa, who's Cade Yeager's daughter in the film, is somehow even worse.
Tessa, break the glass! Break the glass and get out!
She's played by Nicola Peltz, which, going by her track record, should have been a red flag before even going into this movie. Now, she isn't as bad in this as she is in The Last Airbender, but trust me, the bar to be better than that is lower than the center of the earth. I don't even have a lot to say about her. Her character is just very one note on the fact that she wants to have a boyfriend, but her dad won't let her. Michael Bay was also tap dancing on the line of receiving a jail sentence because she was 18 when they started filming, but for God knows what reason he wanted her to be 17 in the movie. And if you guys know Michael Bay at this point, this leads to a lot of uncomfortable moments that happen in the movie where it makes me just want to socially distance myself from him. And don't get me started on that infamous Romeo and Juliet scene. Not only is this another scene that could have easily been cut from the movie, but it's just so bizarre and wrong in every way. The whole movie takes a screeching halt to literally explain why it's okay for a 20-year-old to be dating a 17-year-old. And apparently, this isn't even correct information that the movie is trying to defend, so it just makes the scene look even worse. Even 11-year-old me at the time was watching this and knew something about that just didn't sound right. Anyways, let's move on to the first pedophile in the movie, which is Shane. Shane, who's played by Jack Reynor, is Tessa's secret boyfriend in this movie. And to absolutely no one's surprise, yeah, he's also not very good in this movie.
That was insane. It was awesome, but it was insane, right?
His only character trait is that he's good at driving cars. That's it. That's how one note his character is. He's kind of like a mix of Cade and Tessa, where he's just boring to watch and isn't acting good at all. He's also just a major wimp too, because multiple times the movie shows him folding under pressure and just being really annoying. Like, this movie literally gives you no reason to like his character, and I almost wanted to barf when Mark was okay with letting him be with his daughter at the end. And then we have our magnum opus of terrible human characters, of that being Lucas. Lucas is Cade's childhood best friend that he hired, and he just does not shut up in this movie. Nothing he says is funny at all, and he's also low-key the second pedophile in the movie.
Sweetheart, your shorts are shrinking by the second.
I think she looks hot.
What did you say?
Like a hot teenager.
And he's the sole reason why Cemetery Wind finds them and Optimus in the first place. Like, I hate this guy so much, he just sucks. Now, I have a bit of a bias against this character because I've never liked TJ Miller in any movie I've ever seen. That first Cloverfield movie would have been a 10 out of 10 if TJ Miller just wasn't in it. Nothing he's ever said in any movie, or heck, any real life interviews or podcasts he's ever been on, has made me laugh or just made me find him likable in the slightest. And it turns out I'm not the only one who hates him either, because Michael Bay felt the exact same way.
TJ, you haven't said one funny thing. You got one more chance to say one, this is it. It's your last chance. You haven't been funny this entire scene because you haven't even made the Make-A-Wish kids laugh.
Apparently the reason why Michael Bay kills him off super early and super grotesque is because of how annoying he was on set. And I honestly couldn't be any happier, because there is no way I could have handled a whole movie with him in it, so you know what, that's a rare Michael Bay W. Shout out to him for that, for real. I know a lot of people were probably stunned and shocked when he died, but hey, little 11-year-old me was low-key Fortnite dancing before Fortnite was even a thing. They turned bro into a Lamborghini ad, and that's all I needed in my life. Now, no offense to Sophia Myles and Lee Bingbing, I'm glad they got to be in a major blockbuster movie like this, and honestly their acting was pretty good in the movie, but both of their characters did not need to be in this movie. Their characters served just very little purpose and could have easily cut out like 15 minutes of the movie's runtime if they just weren't in it. Apparently this guy is a well-known YouTuber at the time. I didn't know anything about him then, and I don't know anything about him now, so use that information with what you will. And was KSI ever informed that the name of the company that makes the man-made Transformers is called KSI? Because he was still a big YouTuber at this time, like I was watching him back then when this movie came out. Okay, I'm just asking stupid questions now. Let's move on to the real reason why we watch these movies. So easily the best character in this entire movie is Lockdown. I was a huge fan of his character originally in animated, so I was so hyped to see his live action adaptation. Now, do I think this version is better than his animated counterpart? Nope. But I still think he's pretty cool. He transforms into a Lamborghini Aventador. He has a whole freaking transforming sniper rifle on his face. They integrated his hook from animated. His theme song is a banger, and his lurking presence whenever he's on screen is definitely felt. He even has some one-liners that I really like.
On this planet we have a saying. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I also have a saying. I don't care.
Whenever he's on screen, it makes the movie significantly better and low-key brainwashes me a little bit into thinking the movie isn't as bad as it actually is. I really hated how they killed him off though. You're telling me he was too overwhelmed over a few humans and Bumblebee coming in during the last second to save the day? With how this movie portrayed Lockdown as this experienced deadly bounty hunter, that this wouldn't be how he would go out. And I also feel like his character had a lot of potential to be even better if he survived through this movie and into The Last Night. I don't know, I guess it would give The Last Night to have something else going for it. I'd say the best scene in the entire movie is when we're first introduced to him in Cemetery Wind hunting down Ratchet. I like it because this is the core of what this movie was advertised as and what the whole film should have been about. As good as this scene is, it does have the stupidest line of all time.
Why are you running?
What? Huh? What do you mean, why are you running? Are you dumb? You guys were literally shooting at him, you blew him up, you even shot his leg off, and you have the audacity to ask him why he was running? You guys weren't playing like hide and seek or something with him. You were trying to kill him. So you wanted him to stand there perfectly still while you guys were blowing him to smithereens? Yeah, okay, buddy. Sure. Speaking of Ratchet, yeah, he dies in this movie. Yeah, you weren't getting a bathtub reaction out of me on this one. I've never really cared for Ratchet in any of these movies because he's barely done anything in these films. You know what, let's do a recap of Ratchet's involvement in these movies, shall we? In the first movie, it was the introduction to everyone, so I'll give him a bit of a pass, but he was just kind of quirky, and he helped cut off Brawl's arm with his buzzsaw, which, fun fact, that is literally the only time he ever uses that thing. And he also helped Sam with Ironhide on transporting the cube through the city. I almost forgot about that. In the second movie though, his involvement is laughably non-existent. The most he does is call that one guy a fool and then tells Jolt to put Jetfire's parts onto Optimus. And I barely give Ratchet any credit on that because he quite literally just told Jolt to do that. Jolt did all the work there. So yeah, Ratchet was sleepwalking through Revenge of the Fallen. Now he does do a little bit more in Dark of the Moon, but don't get too excited. He goes up to the moon with Optimus to check on Sentinel's vitals, and then at the end he helps Bumblebee destroy the control pillar. A little bit more, but still not much in the grand scheme of things. And then yeah, he just dies in this one, which is funny because this is the most dedicated screen time given for Ratchet, and it's his death scene. Anything actually important that Ratchet did was completely done off screen. Like he put Bumblebee's legs back together and probably just helped fix up the other Autobots back to shape. And even still, he somehow wasn't able to ever fix Bumblebee's voice box despite them being on Earth for over 7 years at this point. Ratchet is so washed, bro. I don't know what to tell you. He's 0-5 at this point. It didn't help that I already knew he was gonna die going into this because they were showing this man getting bodied in all the trailers for this movie. Quite literally, the only thing that makes his death a little sad is that he was the last of the OG remaining Autobots from the first movie that isn't Optimus Prime or Bumblebee. And he didn't reveal where Optimus was during his final moments, so I'll give him that. Not like he had much of a choice though, look at him. So the best way I honor Ratchet's legacy is by owning his movie masterpiece toy. That's it. One thing I've always found funny though is that when Jazz dies in the first movie, Optimus is kind of like, oh man, that sucks, he was a good guy. Anyways, good job everyone. Then in Dark of the Moon when Ironhide dies, Optimus doesn't even have a reaction. Now thinking about it, I don't even think Optimus knows he died. Bro was reduced to literal atoms. Optimus probably thought he left town after seeing what Sentinel did and was like, screw this, I'm out. But nah, it's when Ratchet dies is when Optimus decides to have a crash out and storm the KSI building, despite Ratchet contributing the least out of all of them. Optimus definitely has his favorites, that's all I'm gonna say. Now with Ratchet gone, you're probably wondering, what happened to all the other guys? You know, Sideswipe, Dino, the Wreckers? And the answer to that is, yeah, we don't know. The movie never shows us. And it doesn't help that Michael Bay banned all tie-in novels, books, and comics due to how much leaked out about Dark of the Moon before the release of that one. That's why Dark of the Moon's ending changed like 50 billion times and we just ended up getting the Mortal Kombat fatality ending. Usually this wouldn't even be a big deal, but Age of Extinction and The Last Night would have benefited the most with these tie-in books because there's just so many unanswered questions. The movie does show Leadfoot's fate, so we know he's dead, but Totsman is kind of confusing because we see his body show up in The Last Night, but he has Leadfoot's head for some reason. So we have no clue if this is supposed to be Totsman or just a whole different character the animators just reused the model of. But yeah, as for Roadbuster, Dino, and Sideswipe, It really is just up to your imagination if they survived or not, which sucks. Hey, Sideswipe was one of my favorite characters, so I'd like to think he got away and he's chilling in Zimbabwe or something, who knows. Okay, getting back on track, let's talk about Optimus. So might be a hot take, but I honestly don't hate how they did Optimus Prime in this one. When we first see him, he's all beat up and damaged, and they even gave him his classic truck from G1, so now all the G1 enthusiasts can shut up now. I do like the part where he stands up for Cade when Tessa's life is on the line. That's very much in character for Optimus Prime. Honestly, I feel like all of Optimus Prime's actions in this movie are pretty justified. I don't even mind him killing Kelsey Grammer, because like I said, that guy was just essentially just Robo Hitler. Okay, maybe not so much him beating up Grimlock. I don't know what his goal was there. You claim you're giving them freedom while also jumping him at the same time, and then you say defend my family or die. Like, you're contradicting what you just said less than a minute ago. Are you okay?
We're giving you freedom! You defend my family or die.
I also think his speech at the end of this one is probably one of the best in the series. He was spitting some bars in this one.
Will we ever see you again?
Cade Yeager, I do not know. But whenever you look to the stars, think of one of them as my soul.
Okay.
Defend this family, Autobots, as they have you. Defend all they can be.
Yeah.
There are mysteries to the universe we were never meant to solve. Those answers we carry inside.
Oh my god.
I am Optimus Prime. Leave planet Earth alone, 'cause I'm coming for you.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's there than me! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Now this leads me into his new design, and I guess all the new designs for that matter, and yeah, they suck. So after Optimus and the gang manage to escape lockdown and Cemetery Wind, Optimus scans a new truck and gets a whole new redesign. Side note, this goes completely against what Optimus said earlier in the movie. He says he needs his Autobots to help repair him, and then he just goes and scans another truck and is perfectly fine now. Gotta love all that consistent and excellent writing, am I right? Anyways, I will admit I do like his new truck, not more than the old one, but I still do like the truck. But it's when he transforms into his robot mode is when I start to struggle with what I'm even looking at. So, what makes this design so bad? I look at Transformers and normal robot designs completely differently. Transformers are supposed to have recognizable car parts on their robot mode that shows that they're, well, you know, a transformer. The first 3 movies designs did a pretty good job with this, I feel like. You can see the windows, the tires, smokestacks, the grill, and overall parts of the robot mode that you could see on his truck. Now let's look at his new robot mode. You see the issue now? Quite literally the only car part I can make out here is the smokestacks on his shoulders. The rest is legit a mystery. No tires, no windows, no anything else. Now as a normal robot design, it looks fine, I guess, but these are Transformers. This just doesn't belong here. And I already know the animators were having cold sweats figuring out how to get this thing to transform, because he for real only transforms like twice in the movie, and they aren't even full body transformations to probably hide the amount of cheating they're doing to make this work. I know this design is supposed to tie into this night thing they're building up, but I don't care. I just don't like it, man. And yeah, I think Bumblebee's new design is somehow even worse. Like, I don't even know how this design got greenlit, because I think this one's just awful. Literally everything I just said about Optimus's design can be said about this one. Like, someone tell me where these spike things are supposed to go when he transforms into a car. I literally dare you. This design was so bad that they immediately went back to his look that he had from the first 3 movies in The Last Night. And what's so annoying too is that his high octane look, which is the design he had before this one, is an absolute banger. Why didn't he stay like this for the rest of the film? Like, I love the old muscle car Camaro he had, and his robot mode just translated it perfectly. It was still recognizable, but also switches the colors around to have black be a more prominent color, which I think is a creative new take for him. I don't have a lot to say when it comes to Bumblebee as a character though. Since Sam is gone, Bumblebee is just kind of there now. He doesn't really have a connection to any of these humans anymore because he just met these new guys. Like, he definitely has a presence in the movie, but the vibe is just kind of off with him now, if you get what I mean. I do like that scene in the KSI building though, when they're calling him old and outdated, but then they start glazing Stinger. I thought that was just a cute scene. Now this leaves the rest of the Autobot cast, and I gotta say, I'm pretty unimpressed with them. Now, I used to hate these guys a lot more than I do now. I couldn't stand them back in the day. I thought they were so annoying, and to be fair, I still think they are. But looking back, I can see what they're trying to do. The previous Autobots in the last movies had personalities, but they were just very muted and subtle, and this led to a lot of casual audiences not really remembering them past the film. So with these new guys, they definitely wanted to make their personalities more front and center and in your face so you could remember them this time. But the problem is that the movie doesn't properly introduce you to any of them, which is insane, because even the previous movies did that. So unless you're a hardcore fan, you probably don't know any of these guys' names. So because I'm so nice and so generous, I'll introduce them for you, since the movie didn't feel like doing it. We'll first start with Hound, and he's probably my least favorite of the new ones, because he's pretty much just a replacement Ironhide. Now, I have nothing but love for John Goodman, and I can clearly tell he's having a fun time voicing the character, but he just does not shut up in this movie. And he easily had the most screen time out of all the new ones too. Not a huge fan of the beard either, it just looks super weird to me. I know Sentinel, Jetfire, and even G1 Transformers had beards too, but it just looked way more natural on them compared to Hound here. He's also the first fat Transformer, which makes no sense to me at all. Like, how does all that fat and junk convert into this little military truck? That's another thing too with these new Autobots. They just have things about them that just doesn't make any logical sense on how they would transform. Like Crosshairs, for example, has a trench coat for some reason, and we're supposed to expect a seamless transformation from that into a Corvette Stingray. It's like the designers forgot they were supposed to be making Transformers, not just cool looking robots just cuz. And the icing on the cake is that we never even see them transform once in the movie. Not even Drift, who I think makes the most logical sense of the three, transforms in the movie. And no, I don't count his like made up CGI helicopter mode. Despite what I said though, I think Crosshairs is probably my favorite of the new cast. I actually don't mind him at all actually. John DiMaggio does an excellent job voicing him, and it fits his snarky and selfish personality perfectly. I actually wasn't familiar with Crosshairs' character before this movie, so I was kind of up to any interpretation they had for him. Actually, now thinking about it, what was Crosshair's G1 design? You know what, Michael Bay? I'll give you a point on this one. Now, Drift I was heavily disappointed with. Despite him not showing up in any cartoons before this movie came out, I was familiar with his character beforehand. I own his toy from what I believe is his design from IDW from back in 2010, and I absolutely love the way that he looked. So when I heard he was gonna be included in Transformers 4, I was beyond excited. If only you could see the look on my face when those first promo images of him released and they just turned him into a stereotypical samurai. And I'd like to give Michael Bay and his team the benefit of the doubt that they didn't intend to give him a yellow face because he's Asian. But given Bay's track record, it's not looking too good. His face is also strangely very humanoid, and the movie has like 10 trillion close-up shots of it, and each time I'm like, ew, get away. They made him a triple changer in this movie, which is kind of cool, although I feel like the only reason he can turn into a helicopter was for some plot convenience. The main car he transforms into is a Bugatti Veyron, which is kind of cool. I've personally never been a huge fan of this car, but I'm aware that's a personal thing. The movie barely makes any use of it, and I don't understand why the studio paid so much money for this car to be in the movie for as little presence as it has. Drift in general is barely given much to do. Like, he only has like one cool moment for them to put in the trailers. So yeah, that's our new Autobot team, and overall, they got nothing on that OG 2007 team. It's now time to talk about the moment we've all been waiting for. The Dinobots. The fans have been begging Michael Bay and his team for years to include them in these movies, and it finally happened. Surely they've treated them with love, respect, and with tons of screen time. They're only in the movie for 6 minutes. Michael Bay has done it again. He scammed us. This is like the Shockwave situation all over again. They put the Dinobots in all the marketing and advertisements for this movie, only for them to barely be in it, and at the end of a nearly 3-hour long movie. Bravo, Michael Bay. Bravo. And their inclusion was so obviously shoehorned in, like it barely makes any sense as to why they're even here. That scene in the very beginning of the movie has nothing to do with the actual Dinobots, even though it makes you believe that. Now, I have a big hot take coming, I'm aware. I've never actually been that big of a fan of the Dinobots. I know, calm down, let me explain. Let me be clear. I'm not saying I dislike the Dinobots, they're just far from my favorite characters in the franchise. The only ones I can really remember is Grimlock and Swoop, even though I think they call them Strafe in this movie for some reason. I know the names of the other ones, but I just start mixing them together because I forget whose name goes to who. I know some of these guys are called Snarl, Slag, Sludge, whatever, but I'd be lying to you if I could figure out who's who without Googling it. I think the sole reason for me not really caring for them very much just stems from me not being a very big fan of dinosaurs in general. I never really found them to be that cool. Fun fact, my dad bought me this dinosaur toy way back in the day when I was like a toddler, and even then I barely played with it because I just didn't like it that much. This is literally like the only dinosaur toy I own, which is like unheard of from a little boy. Now I have nothing but respect for Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park franchise. I recognize how much it's impacted Hollywood and how it set the standard for modern day visual effects. And I certainly do like 2 of those films, but I definitely don't love them like everyone else does, and that's simply due to the fact that I just don't care for dinosaurs very much. So when it came to including the Dinobots into the live action Transformers movies, I was definitely looking forward to seeing them, but my level of hype wasn't as high as everyone else's. So despite how little they are in this movie, how were they represented? I honestly think they did a pretty good job with them. I already know it wasn't easy adapting them because I feel like even G1 enthusiasts can agree that how they were made in G1 was really stupid. Like they just find dinosaur bones behind the Ark and they're just like, hey, let's just make some robots out of them.
If only we had some dinosaurs working for us. They'd really shake up the Decepticons.
I'm with you, Wheeljack. We could build robot versions of those oversized iguanas if it was okay with Optimus Prime.
Robot dinosaurs might be useful. You have my authorization.
Alright then. So even though it's a little confusing how they even got here, hey man, I'll take it I guess. I'm not mad at it. I do like their designs, although I wish they just had some more color thrown into them. Like they're all just kind of gray with some hints of blues and reds thrown in there. Like their toys were able to throw some color into them. I don't know why they couldn't just do that for the actual film. Grimlock's transformation is sick, and it does lead into the best line of the movie.
Oh no. I was expecting a giant car.
So yeah, despite their grand total of like 6 minutes of screen time, the Dinobots were cool for what they are. And I'd be lying if seeing Optimus Prime ride Grimlock with a sword didn't put a massive smile on my face. I just realized I forgot to talk about the Decepticons, so we can go ahead and talk about them real quick. Another hot take incoming, but I actually really like Galvatron's design. I know it goes against everything I said before with it not really looking like a Transformer, but I don't know man, something about my brain sees this and likes it a lot. Now I will admit that I don't like this design being for Galvatron though. Now maybe if they changed his colors to be predominantly purple, I'd be singing a different tune, but I agree that this design doesn't fit Galvatron. I've always thought that this design would be absolutely perfect for Motormaster though. Is that just me? I hope that isn't just me. Character-wise, there really isn't much to talk about. He pretty much just wakes up and wants the seed. We did get Frank Welker to return to finally voice the character, as I guess Hugo Weaving was fed up with receiving easy money. Even though Frank crushes it as Megatron / Galvatron here, it does make this version of him not feel the same as the Megatron we got from the previous 3 movies. Definitely kind of a nitpick, but it's just something I've always felt. And Galvatron does have this one line that's always made me laugh because it sounds like it's straight from like an old cartoon. Like it's the most stereotypical evil villain line ever.
No! Impossible! They're ruining everything!
And you can tell the movie just forgot about him at the end, because so much was going on, they literally just make him walk away and say, "Ha ha ha, Prime, I'll see you next time." Despite everything I said about hating Bumblebee's new design, I actually kind of like it on Stinger. I know I sound like a massive hypocrite for saying this, but it's just how my brain works, okay? I just feel like the color scheme just works so much better for him than Bumblebee. Stinger is kind of like this movie's take on Wasp / Waspinator, but not so much from Beast Wars, but more from Transformers Animated. I thought he was a cool little side character for B to have to face. There really isn't too much to say about him. He gets an approval from me. I will say, Age of Extinction is the best subtitle in the entire franchise. It just sounds so raw. It's kind of funny how we go from one of the best movies with the worst subtitle to the worst movie with the best subtitle. Funny how life works sometimes, you know? I don't like the new thin font they went with though. This is like the only time they used it too. And the title card animation they used for this movie is kind of lame too. The title cards in the last 3 movies were just so creative, fun, and intricate, while this movie is just very safe and boring. I remember being very disappointed when I first saw it in theaters. I'd be a lot harsher on it, but that's only because I've seen worse. One thing I failed to mention in any of these reviews is how goated Steve Jablonsky is for doing the scores for these movies. He knocks it out of the park for each one of these films, and I think his score for this one might be some of his best work yet. You could be watching one of the worst scenes ever put to film, but you can bet Steve Jablonsky's going absolutely dumb in the background. I guess this leads me into the main theme for this movie, which is Battle Cry, but not from Linkin Park this time, but from the Imagine Dragons. I don't know why the Imagine Dragons are so hated within the music community. I never thought they were that bad at all. Hey, I remember singing Radioactive in the shower back when I was in 4th grade, so you could call me a day one fan. And I gotta say, I don't even know if this is a hot take or not, but I think Battle Cry is a banger. Now, I don't like it more than What I've Done or New Divine, but to be fair, it's pretty impossible for me to top those, I'll be honest. And if you were to watch the behind the scenes for this movie, apparently they made this song kind of last minute for the movie, and how it ended up being this good is a real mystery, but props to them for real, they knocked it out of the park. And yeah, I think that wraps up Age of Extinction. In the end, I think I can confidently say that this is my least favorite Transformers movie. It had such a good concept and premise, but it's absolutely ruined by its stupid ideas, its really unlikable characters, and overall with its just really poor execution. The movie just shouldn't have existed in the first place. I have seen some people claim that if you were to remove like 40 minutes of this film, that there's a good movie in here, and you know, I don't know if I agree with that. I think the problem with this movie is just down to its very core. There would be so much you have to rewrite and reorganize if you were to cut out almost a whole hour of it. I don't recommend watching this one at all. It's just not worth it, especially with that runtime. I do, however, recommend looking up clips of this movie because there are some good moments in there. Just make sure to not mistake these clips of the movie as the same quality for the rest of the film if you do decide to watch the whole thing. To no one's surprise, this was the most negatively received Transformers movie of them all, even more than Revenge of the Fallen. Even though the critics claim to have always hated these movies, this was the first one that I feel like even the casual audience didn't like. I remember being out and about in the day and then hearing people be like, you know that new Transformers movie that came out? Yeah, I didn't like it very much. I never heard anything like that for the previous movies. This one was so bad, not even the casual audiences liked it. And despite all the negative reactions to this movie, it still somehow made over $1 billion and was the highest grossing movie of 2014. Surely with how no one liked this one, they definitely didn't go ahead and make another one. You gotta be kidding me.